defend Miami right now.
Miami played a bad game. So have a lot of the other teams in the schedule. Wait. Let me finish. Can you let me finish?
Yeah, sorry.
You have Alabama playing a bad game in week 1, and they're allowed to move on. Georgia plays a bad game against Alabama. They're allowed to move on. Oklahoma plays a bad game against Texas. They're allowed to move on. All these other teams are allowed to move on, and Louisville was underranked. They were underappreciated, a team that I had gotten wrong going into that matchup. They will probably finish the season ranked and in the ACC championship hunt.
So how does their loss not matter because Louisville was underranked?
Didn't say that the loss doesn't matter. Didn't say that the loss doesn't matter.
And then Tennessee loses to two top 6 teams, and you don't want to justify them, but you'll justify Louisville and Miami's losses. Do you see where I'm going with this?
Wait. Say that it's. I don't know how you can compare. You're comparing Tennessee to Miami.
Tennessee lost two games to 2 of your 6 ranked opponents, top 6. They lost to both of those games to teams in your top 6. Miami, who, by the way, had 97 rushing yards versus Florida State and 63 versus Louisville, and we're supposed to say, oh, well, they don't have flaws because they only have 1 loss.
Blake, wait. To the Tennessee-Miami comment that you made, that one is not applicable in my eyes because I have every single game this year, Tennessee's
No, but when you're calling a team overrated, when you're calling them overrated.
Tennessee's overrated. They should not be ranked.
They lost to two teams?
No, I literally just said their defense has been butt cheeks the whole season. They've been
I gotta be honest with you. You know what the most
every offense they've gone up against.
You know what else? Carson Beck has 6 interceptions the last 3 games that he's played.
Yeah, he's played poorly, but
he's
the rest of that team.
No, you got a bad secondary.
Some of the best position groups of college football.
It's going to throw 6 picks in 3 weeks.
But I at least have performances where Carson Beck has played well, and there's a version of him that is a solid quarterback. And we know that if he's not freaking out and trying to do everything and be Superman, he can play within the system.
When have we seen him?
Wait. More importantly, every single position group on that roster, arguably for Miami, is in the top 10. They have a top 10 secondary. They have a top 10 linebacker unit. They have a top 10 defensive line, top 10 offensive line, top 10 running back room, top 10 receiver room.
Pause. No, they don't.
And what position group?
Miami does not have a top 10 offensive line right now. Can I tell you why?
I completely disagree with that.
Okay, well, then the stats aren't proving it out.
What have they?
Because you've given up 5 sacks in the last 2 games that you played, and you couldn't get over 100 rushing yards. The best offensive line or a top 10 offensive line gets pushed versus a Florida State team that's got no pulse. 0 pulse. Don't you dare come at me and tell me
they completely loaded the box. They completely loaded the box against them. And Carson, but
Louisville did not.
That's how football works. That's how football works. Is that you have to wait. When a team tries to counter your biggest strength, you have to provide a second move. And their second move against Florida State was that Carson Beck played well and Malachi Toney played great. The problem was against Louisville. Louisville did the same exact thing, but Beck,
they're not walking guys
like shit.
Carson Beck can't be throwing into triple coverage with 7 and 8 guys dropping back in coverage.
It's not excusable. It's not excusable. It's absolutely not excusable.
I have 2 teams that you couldn't line up and run the ball on. That, quite frankly, you should be able to line up if you're a top 10 unit, which everybody said it was the best offensive line in the country. Right now, no, you're not.
I don't agree with that. I think that
you don't agree with them having 97 yards versus Florida State and 63 versus Louisville, because those aren't opinions; those are facts.
But there's context for why those things happen, Blake. Of course, those numbers apply.
Yards per game the last 3 weeks.
Because teams are desperate to stop their run game. They're incredibly desperate to stop their run game. They're having success. Yes,
mathematically. When you have a telecast that is showing a quarterback throwing into coverage with 8 guys in coverage, mathematically, that is impossible that teams are lining up in the box trying to stop the run game. It's not possible.
What play are you talking about that there were 8 guys in coverage? Are you talking about in the final drive?
No, I'm talking about when he threw into triple coverage and he got hit and the ball got picked and they threw a flag. I'm talking about him throwing into double coverage on a double move. Like, those are things where they literally have a telecast and an end zone copy where 8 guys are in coverage.
But Blake, just because those plays, that's how a defensive game plan works. You load the box early on in the sequence of a game. You bait an opposing team to throwing the ball and taking shots, and then you time when you make adjustments off of it. So, God forbid, Louisville played a really good game plan. God forbid, my whole point with this, and I don't give a shit if people want to give me a hard time for defending Miami. I don't care. Teams are allowed to have hiccups in the current version of college football.
But it's not a hiccup when in the last 3 weeks you're averaging 75 yards rushing. It's not a hiccup. It might be a fact. The last time you told me about something Miami related was last season, and I told you that secondary was cheeks. I'm going to give you – I think that interior offensive line has got a little bit of issues, and it starts at center, to be honest with you. I think teams – Joe, why has Louisville got 2 one-techs? That's unheard of. Unless you're attacking the center, you're not doing that. Teams are telling you that. Florida State is telling you that.
I just find it a little bit unfair. You got a problem in the interior
of that offensive line that you better get fixed now.
Okay, I find it a little bit unfair, and this is what stems from my frustration about conversations.
Shit. 46 minutes into this. Oh, shit.
We might not be doing this Washington.
Okay.
We're past it. We're not getting to that. We got to get to game 6. We're not getting to that. We're gonna have 3 segments to pull from this. Blake, my problem is with the framing of the conversation with Miami and why I was overall frustrated with the way that everybody, the minute that they played poorly and the minute that they lost, that everybody was piling on. The way that they didn't finish well in the second half against Florida State, everybody just immediately started piling on. This Miami team sucks. They're overrated. They should not have been where they were. Anybody who hyped them up was a moron. It pisses me off because we've got other teams in the Big Ten and in the SEC that have had plenty of excuse making from people that have been willing to support them. I keep hearing people make arguments for Illinois. Oh, well, their 2 losses are to the top 2 teams in college football. They still got worked in those 2 games. You hear excuse making for Vanderbilt for the way that they played against Alabama. You get excuse making for Tennessee. You get excuse making for Oklahoma, which I've even done about John Mateer's hand injury. You get excuse making for Ole Miss for the way that they played with their secondary. My point is that Miami might not be a top 3 team like I initially thought. But I think that it's fair to at least give them credit that they have been dominant in spurts, and there is room and an ability for them to bounce back and to recover and to eventually establish consistency and still win the ACC and still get to the college football playoff.
Are they dynamic at receiver without Malachi Toney?
I think that CJ Daniels is a very good receiver. I don't know if I would classify them as dynamic without Toney, but they have Toney. Plenty of teams that don't have one good receiver that are in the top 15.
Like whom?
The AP, like BYU, Vanderbilt. They've got better receivers than Vanderbilt.
You said of the AP poll.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Why are we willing to give grace to other teams, but we can't give it to Miami? That's my argument.
Who do we give grace to?
I think there's been a lot of grace.
You have Miami at 8. I have them at 7. Of the teams that are above them that lost, who do we give grace to? Because I remember vividly coming in here and people in the comments saying that Georgia can't beat Bama. I don't think grace has been given to Georgia at all.
This is kind of part of my conversation point. My talking point here is, and this is actually probably far more applicable because we gave grace to Georgia. We've given grace to Georgia. We've literally pointed out, like, hey, look, Georgia played a bad game against Alabama. They have issues, but there's an opportunity for them to rebound.
You know why we gave them grace? Because it's Bama that they played, not Louisville.
I can't completely counter that.
I mean, if we're going to be honest, one played Bama, the other played Louisville. One's got a third of the NIL budget than Miami. Louisville's got a third of the NIL budget. Dude, all right. Listen, to everybody that's in the comments, Joe and I come out here to argue, to have fun. All right. Here's the truth about Miami that we're a little serious on this one. Joe, I do think that they have a problem in the interior of their offensive line. Legitimately speaking, I do think that they have a problem because they kept running dives. They got zero push. Regardless if you want to talk about the box, then if you can't separate, then that means you're not dynamic without Tony to get things moving. You're talking about an 0-4 Florida State team in the ACC. I get it. I understand what Florida State is, but the one team that can challenge you and actually coaching-wise could challenge you, Joe, they got beat from a coaching perspective too, and they got popped in the mouth. I do think they got an interior offensive line problem. I think their tackles are elite, but there's something about what's happening at center that I think teams that it looks like to me that people are trying to attack with Brock Meyer.
I don't disagree that the O-line needs to be better because they haven't played well over the last couple of games. But my whole point with all this is that there's redeemability because the way that they've played in other matchups against teams with good defensive lines, when they played Notre Dame, when they played Florida, they have shown an ability to establish a rhythm. They need to get back to that. That's my point, is that they've had challenging games. And I don't want anyone to sit here and just go, Florida sucks. We have talked up and we have said, and also we can't use Florida as a tough challenge for teams when we talk about SEC teams. When we can't remove that from the Miami conversation because Florida does have a lot of NFL talent on their defensive line and in their front seven. They are a very, very good defense that had a lot of other structural issues that led to their downfall. Here's the one thing with Miami. I don't see a reason why they would really have any problems with their offensive line for the rest of their regular season schedule, unless they had a complete absolute meltdown and Carson Beck has another absolute meltdown, which
they go up in the cold and they don't like it in the late part of their season. What's the last part of the schedule?
They go to Virginia Tech and Pitt in the final 2 weeks. And then they host Syracuse, they host NC State, and they go to SMU. This week they host Stanford.
That's some of the softest shit I've ever seen. Of all these teams in the top 12 that we just talked about, that might be the softest schedule.
Indiana.
God, that's so soft. God, that's so soft. I mean, at least Notre Dame gets a ranked Navy.